Good morning. I'm excited because Dick is going to talk about the life of Montrose for 100 years, as you see on the screen. And that's the namesake of our organization, and Dick has lived it. So that's going to be exciting. I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. Actually, Dick was born at home in Montrose, right around the corner on Adams Street. It's the house with the little post office in the yard, for those of you familiar with the area. He graduated from Fairhope High School, graduated from Auburn with a degree in business administration, married Nancy Kelly, and had 3 daughters and 1 son. He worked in sales and management for IBM in the Southeast for 36 years, retired, and then took a second career as a pioneer in web development design. Did that, and then finished as devoting full time to volunteer tasks. He's active in St. James Episcopal Church, served on the first Baldwin County Zoning Commission exclusively for Montrose. Served on the board of the Village Point Foundation, longtime member of the Fairhope Yacht Club and currently sails on Mobile Bay. A member of the Baldwin Historic Association and Montrose Historic Preservation Society. He's on the board of trustees of the Montrose Cemetery Association. Currently is a cast member in the newly launched Hulu production of Love in Fairhope. Go Dick! I think it's pretty safe to say, by the way, his parents wrote the book Montrose in 1959, which I haven't had a chance to see, but I'm anxious to see, to supplement what Dick tells us about today. I think that'll be great. There you go. And I think Betty might have an end to sales. Is Betty around?
I am. Yes, anyone wants it, I'm honored to sell it to you. I gotta support it now.
Yeah.
Anyway, we do have it on the book committee, so I just gave one to Ann. I would have brought more, I didn't realize, but Dick may have extras with him. If not, I do.
He can comment on that.
I'm in the roster, so if you really want one, I'll bring it to you.
So it's a real treat because we really have an authority on Montrose. I think we're going to learn a lot from Dick's presentation today. I want to thank, before we move on, Diane, Ann, and Louise for their great effort at the food preparation. And I saw it. It's pretty impressive. I encourage everybody to eat. And Jeff Comer, Barry, and Tammy for videotaping this presentation. And thank you very much. And I guess we'll sit back and Dick, you ready to go? Okay.
Thank you, Bo. And I hope that you folks can hear me in that back row. Would you raise your hand if you can? Okay, that's better than put your hand up if you can't be seeing me. Okay. This has been a pleasure putting it together. It's a group that I love and about a subject that I love. And we're going to do basically a walk through ancient history for Montrose in pictures. And we're going to cover a number of topics. I'm going to walk through them in the sequence that I'll try to cover these things. And believe me, there have been changes in each of these categories over the years. This presents, and this plaque is down on the way to Fairhope on the bay side in front of Echo Rouge. But it goes back into the early histories of Montrose. It didn't just start in the 1850s. I mean, there were Spaniards coming here, some of the English, different pioneering groups that had outposts on the bluffs or over in Montrose, or Indians had potteries here. So the history of Montrose goes way back. This land was bought by Cyrus Sibley, and he created the community in the 1850s, as you know. And so here's some things that happened in the world to kind of position your thinking about what was going on a long time ago. We had a president that died. There was a huge earthquake over in Japan, and America rallied around, as we do, and gave them help. And I don't know if you've heard about some of these people, but they were here and they passed away in that year. And Gustav Eiffel was the guy that designed and built the Eiffel Tower. That's why he's in the list. We had just finished World War I. That was fresh in everybody's memory back then. And after that time and before we came along, World War II took place. Back in 1923, had just finished a pandemic. It was the Spanish flu. It really hit hard in Mobile and over here some. The nation was in prohibition. You couldn't get a drink unless you knew somebody. So, hey, Henry, come on in. So these were sort of the setting of what's going on in the world. Now, I'd like to kind of walk you through some of the physical features of Montrose, the houses, and how that evolved, because they were all built out of pine lumber, and it came from down here on the hill. My house where I grew up in next door over there was built in the 1850s, and I had a beam under the front porch, as you could see where the axis had shaped the beam 40 feet long, a couple of 100-year-old tree. So a lot of the early homes, and there's about 27 homes in Montrose that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. If you really want a list, I've got a list you can have. And so that was the beginning of that. Everybody seen this? This is kind of a treasure. Henry Stuart was moved here for his health because he wanted to live, and they had told him he was going to die in a couple of months from pneumonia. He lived many years right here. He built this little thing by himself, a brick at a time, bringing up water from the creek, and he had a little cot inside that he could raise up to the ceiling, and you can still walk in freely and see it, and it's been preserved, and I really think the Niemeyers knows it, preserved it for all time, because it's quite an attraction. Now, streets. When I grew up, and by the way, I wanted to spell any rumors, this 100 years ago is not first-person account. I had to do some research, largely on the mother and dad's book, but also the wonder of Google, so you can get all kind of information. But this on the left shows the street out in Adams Street over here in the 40s when I was coming along. And it was dirt roads. There were no paved streets in Montrose anywhere. That came along much later. And the highway from Daphne on south was right out here on what's now the Scenic Drive. There was a move to put a big federal highway, multi-lane, down that same street. But some of the citizens rallied and stopped that event, and it got put out further out on 4th Street, and that's what we have now with the 4-lane. The second picture shows currently where it's been paved, and I got to tell you, I was not real sure I wanted my Sandy Road paved, but I'm glad they did. Back when I was a kid going to school, and Mom would drive me up to Daphne, and you had to slide around through the mud, because that's what the Baldwin County roads were, red mud. And it gets wet, it's slippery. Well, so that's progress that we've had after that. One of the things that is markedly different is the delivery of mail. Back in the 1920 time frame, the mail came over by bay boat. And the whole story of bay boat, Jeff could give you a whole story of bay boats because it's quite a history, a lot of them. But they would come over across the Bay and stop up in Daphne and then Montrose and Fairhope and Point Clear. And that would be bringing people home from work. In the morning, it would take them back to work or whatever. And so the post office was first permanent post office is the one that's still standing. A little 10-foot square, probably over here on the Adams Street. Prior to that, Mr. Marshall had it in his little store that was there. When he passed away, his wife tore that down, built this little 10-foot square building. I'm told it might be the smallest post office in the U.S. I don't know. But that's, if you haven't seen it, I would suggest you take a look at it. Okay, on the utilities scene, it was quite different. How was it back then? Different. We did not have running water. Daphne didn't run water down here for, 50s or 60s. But at that time, we had a well, a dug well, still over there. Looks pretty well like that today. And we'd go out in the morning and crank up the bucket, get the water for the house. Then you take it into the house, use it, and there was no functioning bathroom like you have today. We'd use these utensils, and that was the setup for your bathroom. The rest of it was out in the back. We did have no electricity, of course, so it was kerosene lamps. Actually, this one up here in the ceiling was one of them. It was hanging in our house in the back hall, and it was kerosene when I grew up. And we electrified it, and I'm glad to say we still have it hanging here. And it would get hot in the summertime. That is why the houses were built with these very tall ceilings. All your old homes had like 12-foot ceilings, so the heat would get out of your way. And if that didn't work, you have fans. It's just stay cool. So that was different. Today we get all upset if the air conditioner goes away. Ice was important to keep your food cold. There would be a truck, I guess it was loaded up down in Fairhope at Berglund's or someplace, and they would come around and you'd put a little sign in your window, 0, 25, 50, 100, and the guy would get his tongs and cut off that size block and bring it up to the house and put it in the ice box. And that was the ice delivery. If you wanted chips for anything for your drink, we have drop it in there and crank that handle around. And I got one of them on the wall in there, you can see. Okay, there was a school in Montrose. It's called the Montrose Academy. It was used for a number of years. It, like the cemetery, was dedicated by, or deeded by Mr. Sibley to the use of the citizens. And they taught classes from back in 1857 until county schools were available, and so it was discontinued. And when they discontinued the use of it, it reverted to ownership of the Sibley heirs. That was in the contract. And then that is what turned into Sun's Reign today over here on 2nd Street. Did we have law enforcement? We did. There was Percy. Percy in his car. Percy would drive around at random times so you wouldn't know when he was coming. That was it. And today, Fairhope has a big force, so does the county, but Daphne alone has 105 total personnel, sworn and unsworn, and 64 vehicles. So we are far better protected and covered than we were back in those days. But it's necessary. I know as some of us get older, it's important to have medical attention available, and that's a big factor. And back in those days, you better have a good relationship with your doctor if you're going to wake him up at midnight. And that's kind of the way it was. As a youth, I had to have an appendectomy, and they had to do it in Mobile, and that was the first time that my folks drove through the Bankhead Tunnel. Before that, it was tough getting to Mobile from here, but the tunnel made everything different. Also, communications. No cell phones, no satellites, and it was all right. It worked. You could get people on the party line and hear what was going on. The only means of transit, well, unless you drove way up north and back and across, the main way you'll get to Mobile and back is the bay boats, as I mentioned. That was at the foot of Sibley Street. It's called Stedman's Landing. You can go down there today and walk out, and you can still see some of the piers that are there from back in that time. But finally, after rebuilding after several hurricanes, they did not rebuild the pier, and people had to, at that point, go up to Daphne to catch the boat. That's what a bay boat looks like. Many of them burned. We lost them at different places, different times. These people are important to the history here. The Kelly brothers. That's how the merchandise, the goods, got from the bay boat up the hill to Montrose. They would pull it on their cart. And they're buried in the cemetery. And this over here to my left is a picture of their sister, Emily Kelly. And she was a student at the school. The headmasters actually painted that picture. Over time, they gave it to my family, and it was a simpler lifestyle. Everybody knew everybody, and we would cooperate on Jubilee calls and things like that. Now, in 1941 is when the Bankhead Tunnel opened up, and that was a big day, like I've said. It really changed the dynamics and the reach of Montrose people. And now they've already put in the second tunnel, and now we're doing some more. So it keeps moving. One of the few community features of Montrose, believe it or not, is the cemetery. And it's turned into kind of a delightful dog walk. Everybody's visiting, and we're so glad to see it because it keeps it active and safer. And if you want to know more about that, there's a website, montrosecemetery.org, that will give you information, and you can navigate around and find out about it. One of the people that's buried there has got a very special history. Wally Valerie had a ceremony for him a few years ago and put this inscription down. If you can read it, if you can't, go out there. It's on the west side near the fence. And he and his wife were buried there. But he, in the year that we're talking about, 1923, he was 91 years old. And he lived another 25 years. He died at 106. So that's a record to shoot for. Okay, let's skip ahead in this virtual walk and talk about what's coming now, what's in the future. It's here. Who would have ever thought of this back 100 years ago or even 50 years ago? I mean, we're living in the future. Yep, that's a live robot, if you can say it that way. And I've seen robots playing table tennis against each other. It's just incredible. Anybody remember the comic strip with Dick Tracy? And Dick Tracy, Brisk Radio, said, well, that's a joke. That'll never happen. Maybe it will. Oh, I'm sure a lot of you have the Apple Watch, and the things you can do on that are just amazing. It's really part of the future that is here. And Montrose has evolved to where I think we have a very nice post office. If you want to know more about the progression of our post office, inside by the desk, there's a storyboard with a picture and a timeline for every postmaster from Thomas Marshall on up to Eric. So it's interesting because it did move around in different places as somebody would take over and they'd have it in their home. I'd like to wrap up talking about Montrose. Not what has changed, but what has stayed the same. Yep, hurricanes have stayed the same. They still come around. So do jubilees. We're one of the 2 places in the world, the Eastern Shore, that has jubilees. Joanne knows that very well. I used to go down to her beach to stay there. And so the things that have not changed are our climate, our residential nature, where we espouse and have non-commercial in the center of Montrose. And we have friendly people like you guys. I think that's the best part of it, is having close neighbors. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.